When I was 22, I had $30,000 in student loans. But by the time I was 33, I was completely debt free. I owned my home outright and built a business that I love. In this video, I'm breaking down 4 things that you can do to pay off debt fast, save aggressively, buy real estate, and build a business so that you can follow this exact same plan to freedom. The reason I'm making this video is because I talk with a lot of people in their 20s who don't even know that this plan exists, and they're frustrated with the current system that they're being placed into. So the first thing, let's talk about when I was 22, I paid off $30,000 in student loans. And how did I do that? So coming out of college, I already knew that I wanted to pay off my student loans. I was living with my mom at the time, but she got married and moved away. So I had to move somewhere. Either I was going to rent a place for a couple $100, like a room, or I called my dad, who I never lived with, and I said, hey, any way I could live in your basement, I'll do everything. I'll be an on-call babysitter. I'll cut the grass. I'll do whatever it takes. And could I live there for a year and not pay any rent? He said yes. So I moved in with my dad. Sometimes when people hear this story, they say, well, of course you did because you moved in with your dad. What I would tell you is if I didn't move in with my dad, I would have moved somewhere else. I had other people that I was looking at renting a room from them for a couple $100 for the first year so I could get by. I had secured a job at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, renting cars with overtime, 70 hours a week. I was making $48,000 a year. So I knew that $48,000 a year, if I could live off of $500 per month, right? $500. So I could rent a room for like $200. I had an old beater car. I had an old beater phone, and I could just, get my food, get peanut butter sandwiches, and I could eat that, and I could live off $500 a month. That's $2,500 per month that I could save or put towards my student loans. That $2,500 per month times 12 turned into $30,000. That was the game plan for me, was how can I live off $500, whether that's renting a room, whether that's being an on-call babysitter or whatever I need to do, so that way I could live like that. So that was the first thing I did. And I would recommend to anyone that's out there is get out of debt and do it fast and stay out of debt. So if it took me 2 years, I would have been 2 years. It wouldn't have been 22 and 23. It would have been 22 and 24 if I could only live off $1,000. The whole moral of this part is do not just take debt as this is what it is. Get out of debt fast, because you're going to see that it helped me go very, very quickly to all the next goals that people have. And what I found is that when you tackle one thing at a time, it starts to snowball and you get very quicker outsized results. And when people look at you or look back at it, they say, wow, how did you get there so quickly? And it's because I went in this system. First, get out of debt and stay out of debt. One other thing on this of exactly how I did it, because I want to try to make this as practical as possible. What I did was I was making $48,000 a year. So I took my monthly amount of money that I made. So I knew that I was going to make $3,000 per month. So I took that. Then I said, okay, out of that $3,000, I listed out every single line item in my budget. So I said, okay, for gas, this, car insurance, this, cell phone, this, food, this. That was literally it. Okay. And then $3,000 minus $500 for all that stuff left me with $2,500, like I mentioned. And then $2,500 times 12, I paid off my loans. So if you don't have a budget, you need to have a budget. And if you are serious about getting out of debt and building wealth very quickly, this is the first step, in my opinion, is get out of debt. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Next up. All right, so then I was debt free. So I was 23. I just paid off my student loans. Now I didn't go out and buy a Bugatti, okay, because I'm debt free or anything. I said, okay, well, I have a good situation, so let me start paying rent to my dad. So I started paying rent for the room. So I paid him $250 a month for the room. I still did all the other stuff, on-call babysitter, everything. At Enterprise, they have a system where, if you do good in the first year, management trainee, you can get promoted to the next thing, which is management assistant, and then assistant manager, and then branch manager. So in the first year, I did really good at my job. All I did was work. So, how can you not be good at it? And then the next year, I said, okay, I'm making a little bit more money, so I could pay a little bit more rent, maybe spend a little bit more money on certain things. I still had the old beater car, I had an old Saturn, and I saved the same exact amount of money. I saved $30,000 that year. So I did the exact same thing, saved $30,000. 23. Now I'm 24. Same exact thing. I was making a little bit more money because I got another promotion. Same exact thing. A little bit more money. Let's say I was making like $53,000, something like that. $54,000. So 24, same exact thing. Now I'm at the point where I have $60,000 in the bank plus my emergency fund. So I had about $67,000 in the bank. So I'm going into age 25, $67,000 in the bank. I'm not saying that you have to do this. And when I tell people this story, they say it's unrealistic, and it might be unrealistic for some people. And there's other ways to do it, and I'm going to break that down as well. What I did was I went and found a condo in the worst place in town, literally the worst place in my county. I live outside of Washington, D.C. It's not cheap to live here, let me tell you. At the time that I was doing this was like 2015, 2016. I know the prices of real estate has gone up and it's going to continue to go up. But at the time, it was one of the top 10 most expensive places to live in the country. So I know that you can find this stuff in different places. What I did was I went and found a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom condo in the not the nice places, like literally Section 8 houses around it. And I put in an offer. It was listed for around $70,000, something like that. It needed to be all gutted out and cleaned and everything. I was a single guy, right? So I put in an offer for $57,000, 67, 57. Now, I'm not saying that there's real estate, right? People every time I tell people this, they're like, "Oh, you can't find a condo around there. My stuff's 200,000." Okay. I'm going to give you another situation here. But what I did was I paid I had 67,000. I put in an offer 57,000. They accepted 57,000. I bought the condo. Then I used the money that I had previously been saving to fix things up as I was living there. So that's how I bought the condo with cash when I was 25, and now I had no debt. Now, if you're in a situation where there's not, real estate that's available for $60,000, $70,000, I'm not saying you got to go out and buy real estate in order to build wealth, because we're going to get to that. What I would recommend doing is continue to save money and learn how to invest it. Whether that's going to be in stocks, whether that's going to be in business, whether that's going to be in real estate. So if I was going to do this again and I was talking to someone, here's what I would do. Okay. I would, if that opportunity wasn't available to me, I would buy real estate. I would buy probably a single family house, and I would do exactly the situation that I would have done the other way, which is I would rent those rooms out to people. So I would buy a real estate, probably like around a college campus or something like that, and I would rent those rooms out to people to cover whatever my mortgage is. Because now I have real estate that I can rent out to people that is paying me, and I also would live there. I would live there as well. I would have one of the rooms, the master bedroom probably. And I would make sure that whatever the expense was of the monthly mortgage, I wouldn't make that more than like 20, 30% of my actual take home pay. So if I was making $5,000, I would try to keep that around like $2,000, something like that. Try to keep it within range. And okay, you might be hearing that and say, well, that doesn't sound realistic. I'm not saying to buy this mansion, and I'm not saying that you need to buy it when you're 25. What I am saying is that you need to save money so that you have a large down payment, so that you make those numbers work in correlation with you. And if you have renters in there, it's going to help you as well. So all that to say, 25 for me, I bought a condo with cash. I'm not saying you have to do that, but I'm saying there's other ways that you can buy real estate that makes a lot of sense, that I wish that I would have done that as well. All right, so all that makes pretty much sense. Paid off debt, saved up the rest, bought a condo, and now I'm good. Now here's where it starts to get fun, because at this point, right, that framework, whether it's pay off debt and buy a house and you rent out the rooms, or buy a condo with cash, people when you start talking with people, they say, wow, that's unique. Like, how did you do that? What did you do? They start asking you questions. For me, my wife is a kindergarten teacher. All of her friends started asking me, how did you pay off your student loans? How did you do this? How did you do that? So I started a blog, a website, creating content, whatever you want to call it. And I started creating content about what I did. So this was before ChatGPT and all this other stuff, but I used to write blog posts every single week. I wrote 3 blog posts by hand, and I learned how to create content that would get in front of people, because I was passionate about it, because I had just done it, and I was passionate about building more wealth for myself. So I created content, my blog website. Nowadays, I would recommend probably just creating a TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, whatever. But my blog website at the time was getting 30 to 40,000 views per month. So people were coming to my website and reading my stuff. Think about it in these days is like TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. You're creating content around what you enjoy and what you like, and you're helping other people do the exact same thing. I ended up getting in Forbes, CNBC, Yahoo Finance, Wall Street Journal, all these other cool things, and built affiliate partnerships with other brands and companies, just talking about my story and what I've done and helping other people. I did not get rich this way. Okay, let me just clear with that. I did this for 4 years, and I probably made $2,000 or $3,000 over those 4 years doing this. But what it did is it gave me a skill set that I could leverage into another opportunity. So before I hop into that, this is like my 2B. I took what I had done, the cool stuff I had done, and I turned it into content to share with other people and help other people. Literally, that's what I was doing. And this helped set me up in the future. So the next thing that I did from a financial perspective, and again, highly recommend this when I tell people like, I should have done this, is automatic millionaire status. This is the third bullet point. So there's this thing called compound interest. Compound interest means when you put $1,000 in and you get 10% out, which is like normal return, 7 or 8%, but you get returns every single year. $1,000 in, 10% out is $100. So the next year, you don't just have $1,000, you have 1,000 plus 100, so you have $1,100. Then let's say you get 10% again. This is compound interest. It starts to snowball and snowball. So there's this automatic millionaire thing that you should do if you're in your 20s, which is by the time that you hit the age of 28, if you have $70,000 in an investment account and you never put another dollar in, by the time you're 65, compound interest will compound to $1 million. So for me, from age 25 to 28, that's exactly what I did. I maxed out my 401k at work with their match. I started doing 20-ish thousand every single month, and I got to $70,000. Okay. So I had $70,000 by the time I'm 28. Just go to Google compound interest calculator. You put the money in there. By the time you're age 65, from 27 to 65, if you get a 7 or 8% return, you're going to hit $1 million. So you're automatic millionaire. So let me just frame this up. From 22 to 28, okay, 6 years, I got out of debt, I bought real estate, and I became an automatic millionaire by the time that I'm 65. All of these things I did before the age of 30. When I tell people this, they say, okay, well, I wish I would have done that if people are older, but also like, well, where's the fun? What are you doing for fun? That kind of stuff. Okay, so this is where now I'm starting to have a lot more fun, okay? Because I have no debt, automatic millionaire, have a place to live, no debt. So what I did was I ended up leaving my corporate job because I didn't like what I was doing. And a lot of times you get into these jobs and you get the golden handcuffs where you get debt and then you have this mortgage or something over your head. And then you're trying to save a little bit here and you're trying to do all this whole juggling act and all this stuff. And then you get stuck, okay, into your 30s and 40s. It happens to every single person that I talk to if you don't have a game plan in your 20s and especially in your 30s because you have kids, and then it just snowballs into issues of being stuck with golden handcuffs. Golden handcuffs means you make 80, 90, 150,000, $200,000, but you're stuck at something that you don't like because you have all of these responsibilities, kids, mortgage, family, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So what I did was I said, I don't like what I'm doing. I want to go do something else, but I also want to do a little fun. I've been, really grinding this out for the last 5 or 6 years so that I could get to this point. So I quit my job. I bought a tiny school bus and I made a little tiny home. In that tiny home, I traveled around with my dog around the country for 95 days, making content, continuing with my blog, and doing fun things that I liked, which was hiking, camping, hanging with my dog, doing fun stuff. I wasn't making any money, okay? I had saved money, I was living off the savings, and I was just going out doing something fun. Again, when I tell people, they say, wow, I wish I would have done that. Okay, if you're listening to this when you're 20s, it's like, you got to do cool stuff because you're going to get those golden handcuffs and those responsibilities are going to be hard. So bought the school bus, traveled around the country, did more cool stuff, continue my blog, creating content. And when I came back from that trip, one of the companies that I used to sell to when I was at Enterprise, I ended up going into their corporate office. One of the companies that I used to sell to, I ended up going to work there for about 1 year. And when I went to work there, my skill set of creating content, SEO, digital marketing, and my skill set of running businesses at Enterprise all came to a head, and I helped this company grow. And he said, hey, you helped me grow from $3 million to $5 million in revenue. You should go out and help other businesses. He's a really great guy because he could have just kept that to himself. However, what I'm going to tell you is if you do things like create content or you have a unique skill set and you help people do things and achieve good results, okay? I used to help people pay off their debt and do that stuff. Now I help businesses grow by using digital marketing and technology for growth. If you help people do things, you can help people do things and build a business out of it. And I made content on my channel about how I did it. But basically, I ended up going into starting my own business without really knowing what I was doing and just trading my time for money. But this brings me to the fourth thing, which was I got married and I ended up selling that condo. So I bought it for $57,000. I sold it for $95,000. So there's some appreciation there. Of course, I spent probably about $15,000, like, redoing the bathroom, redoing the kitchen, painting, carpet, flooring, all the stuff. So I didn't really come out with, too much money over a 5-year time span, maybe $10,000 or $20,000. Too much money in the grand scheme of things of like holding on to real estate. But regardless, this is why I think that if you get into the real estate game, either way that I told you, you're going to have money when you go to sell it. So we could use that $100,000 to then go buy a single family home. Now, when we bought the single family home, we did the exact same thing. We could have gone and bought this huge thing, right? But we bought what makes sense for our family, what we like, inside of a budget. And we use the same thresholds, which is don't let your mortgage be 25 or 30% of whatever your take home is. Now, here's where it gets really, really fun. Okay. We had no debt. Obviously, we got the mortgage. Okay. But up until that point, we had no debt. Automatic Millionaire. We had already built the skills of saving. My wife and I, we had been together for a while, dating. So like, I already knew that she could save as well, and I could save as well and invest as well. So we already had built these skills up. So when we go into, a real family and owning a real house, we already knew that we could pay this house off and still, build wealth into the future. So here's what we did. The business that I was running, I was continuing to help more and more people. So we started making more and more money. I'm not saying, millions of dollars. I'm saying I was making about probably $80,000, $90,000 at this business. I was in my early 30s. All the extra money that I started making, I'm talking like an extra 50,000 here, an extra 100,000, right? The business was making $200,000, and I was really pinching the pennies, just optimizing for money. I would just take that money for the first 3 or 4 years of the business, and I would just pay the mortgage, pay it down, pay it down. And what ended up happening was we paid off our mortgage. At the age of 33, now we're at the point where it's like, okay, like I said in the beginning, we have no debt. We have this investing, this automatic millionaire thing set up. And now we have a family, we have a kid. And it's like, we're in a really good spot. And when I tell people, I'm not sharing this to like brag. I'm sharing this because, as I told you, there is a path out here to this. And they don't teach us in school, right? I kind of figured this out through trial and error and reading books like Dave Ramsey and Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And like, how the heck do you even start a business? I didn't know anyone that even owned a business. So like, there's a framework that's out there to do this stuff. And I'm trying to make it simple and accessible to people to listen to and say, okay, I could see how I could do this. So I hope this was helpful. It's a little nerve-wracking for me because I'm, sharing a lot of personal stuff, but I also know that it could help a lot of people. So if you have a question or you want me to dive deep on something else, drop a comment below. I want to make content on things that people actually want to hear about and how I can help them. If you like this type of content, be sure to hit like and subscribe. I make content like this to help people, and look forward to seeing the next video.